stayed with us every week.
No,
I'm just kidding.
What is
no,
up,
no,
everyone? This is
no.
Joe was automatically that it hadn't even been 10 seconds into the show, and he was already trying to blame Alexandra for something. So obviously we know that it's been a big week. Obviously April Fool's week. April Fool's Day happened on Monday, so there were some good posts out there. Along with April 2nd, we had our big delivery numbers from Tesla. And obviously we know that the market has reacted, and we are still roughly down about 32%. You can see the dip a little bit further up, hovering above April, just because of the response from really the analysts and really investors as well. So, but we know that this week, Joe, panic enabled. Love the title. In some ways, but so the results were 387,000 cars delivered, about 433,000 produced. And I think some of the notes, and again, I know some of this for some of our views, this has been exhausted, but for us, we're just catching up on the news every week. Some of the things that Tesla has kind of called out is decline in volumes was partially due to the early phase of the production ramp of the updated Model 3 at the Fremont factory, and factory shutdowns resulting from shipping diversions caused by the Red Sea conflict and an arson attack at Gigafactory Berlin. What were your, obviously, if all of us can just step back to Tuesday, and I think on our show we actually did a pretty good job of just pretty much preparing probably everyone for what we saw on Tuesday. But what were your initial reactions? And then obviously now that you've had 3 or 4 days, has your views changed, or have you just been the same view all the way through? What has been your take this week as we had Q1 deliveries, the results come out?
I stay pretty grounded in the fact that the fundamentals haven't changed of the company, and so I have a long-term view, so I really don't think too deeply on it. But I can understand, like, especially for the people who got in 2020 and stuff like that, and they were on that meteoric rise and stuff, and how they must feel. So I get the frustrations from some analysts and some of the people who have to manage those funds. I completely understand, but for me personally, I'm okay.
Jeff or Alexandra?
Yeah, same for me. I was actually waiting to purchase. I commented on X for quite a while on it. And it went down to 166, and I bought at 166 what I had left of allowance in my 401k and in my Roth IRA. But I'd hoped it would go down a little bit more. It did not. There was a solid base. ARK was buying for quite a big quantity on the second, $40 million US, and I think that helped stabilize the price. So I think everybody anticipated this was going to be a harsh quarter, and other EV makers felt it as well. The few numbers that we have so far. So it is what it is. Nothing to brag about, but it's not it's not horrible. The price action we saw on the stock reflected that it was a nothing burger in the end, which we'll see now for the Q1 numbers on the 23rd. So this month, for the first time, for a long time, it's going to be a Tuesday, not a Wednesday, on a full moon day. So let's see what that brings. And but I do believe lots of people have discounted this first quarter. The way to autonomy, the way to robotaxis is a long path, and have from time to time disappointing sales numbers, having less stress on a single quarter. It is what it is.
Yeah, I was interested in the P&D. There's a lot more text from Tesla than normal. They talked about, and I've talked about it on a few shows this week, of what supply disruptions do to your output and what it does to strand inventory. and just trying to understand those, help maybe others understand those dynamics. But they said it's partially due to that. I love for them to get into what else they think the drivers are, maybe on the earnings call. But more importantly, after they spend a minute or two on that, they should really, in my opinion, what I'd love to see as an investor, I'm not trying to tell Tesla what to do, but what I'd love to see is just what's that path going forward. What do you see for the rest of the year as the company transitions from a hardware, more of a hardware company to more of a software-centric company? How do you see that transition playing out? I know it's hard to peg exact dates and timing, but is there any more granularity that you can give relative to what you provided maybe in Investor Day? Because this is a pretty big transition for the company. Q1 marked the transition to V12 autonomy, the FSD beta label being removed. So what does this all mean? And can you tie some of this together for investors? So I'd be a little bit more interested in that path going forward, and maybe spending a minute on, do any of the dynamics that we saw in Q1, do they last throughout the remainder of the year, or do you see it differently? That's what I'd be interested in.
Yeah, my question, two questions to everyone is, and maybe the first question is more for Jeff, would be, the things that they called out in the commentary, like how material do you think those things are versus, because as you said, yeah, typically it's just 3 lines. This is what we delivered. This is what we produced. And there's not a whole lot more. So the question is more of like, how much do you think, obviously we know the arson, even there was a huge response obviously from Giga Berlin, but how much of those like are material impacts, one? And then two, like, do we know, from companies that you've seen like Apple go from like hardware to software, how long were those transitions? At what point did they make those transitions? Because like, so for example, I picked up, shout out to Joe for I was about to say 2, but yeah, shout out to Joe for coming with me to get my Model X. Like I just got a text from them yesterday, and they were like, "Hey, congrats on the." Sorry, got a guinea pig. But they were literally just like, "Hey, by the way, sorry, maybe we'll go to the supply chain." All right, okay, sorry. This guinea pig is crazy. So my question is more of like, at what point, how were those transitions like an Apple? At what point? Because I think we are noticing that Tesla is switching more to like, they're trying to showcase the capabilities. And as I said, I'm getting texts about the delivery of like, hey, come get a free demo. Let's check it out. Let's go on a ride together. So they're very much pushing that. So I'll shoot it over to Jeff on the supply chain, and then we'll branch out from the supply chain. Sorry about the background noise.
No, I mean, I love having the 5th guest on the show, 5th host on the show. I think it's great.
Show it to us. Show it to us.
It seems like cheering us on too. No, so on the supply chain, the supply chain issues were material. I think Tesla should get into the impact. And I would say, okay, there's a mixture of things that happen in the quarter. There's probably some demand issues in some pockets. There's probably some supply issues in pockets, and I think they were material, by the way. And there's execution issues. So this Model 3 changeover, normally when you're doing a new generational product changeover to go from the old generation to the new generation, one of the things you try to nail is you try to drive down the inventory of the old generation, and you try to make sure you have no excess and obsolescence in material, because that hits the balance sheet really hard. And John, you would know that as well. And just from your background, and I think Tesla probably did a great job at that. But the other thing it's incumbent upon you as owning a product line globally is to introduce the new one seamlessly and to not leave the market undersupplied. So it looks like the market was absorbing 50 to 55,000, maybe in upwards of 60,000 Model 3s in North America per quarter. And we don't know what the ending number is going to be, but it looks like there may have been some inventory of the old stuff, and there may have been some builds of the new stuff, but it looks like that it was severely undersupplied. If you put it on a number, is it 15,000 Model 3s that went out versus 55,000. So that's a material miss for the quarter. But again, I don't just say like, oh, it's a supply issue. It looks like the rear wheel drive one's in supply. It looks like the long range version was not in supply. But you have to look at, okay, well, why? But also, it's really incumbent upon the OEM to not have those issues versus just saying. So, I'd be interested to understand from Tesla if they solve the problem, and and where do we go from here? Second, on the Berlin stuff. So, really quick, they are material. The fire issue, where it happened in the quarter in terms of timing. Remember, when these factories go down, they need to re-ramp up, and also the inventory that they're building, whether it's a direct-to-consumer purchase or whether it's stuff they're building for inventory. Tesla has build slots throughout the quarter. Think of it as like almost 10 different build slots per factory per quarter per week, and think of it as 10 different slots. And they'll build a slot in this week for this region that's going to go from Berlin to this part of Europe. And each point of distribution has a differing length of time. So when you miss that period of time, that build week, you can't necessarily just make it up. You may be able to over-index in a few other weeks later on, but you can't necessarily. So some of that demand for some of that, even though it's built and it's there, it may not reach its point of destination in time, and therefore Tesla holds it in inventory. And that's a little bit of, call it temporary stranded inventory. So I've tried to explain this to people. A lot of people are looking for one-word responses on X. It's a 160-character platform. I get it. But these things are somewhat nuanced. So, yeah, they're material. And in terms of this transition, I'll just say to software as a services company, Tesla's been building this for many years, and so did Apple and other companies. So, it's going to happen, I think, fairly quickly. Especially with the way Tesla is doing it, through generative AI, and I think we're going to see rapid rates of improvement and rapid deployment. But it's also a very complex area as well. So we're looking forward to see how that plays out. Okay.
So we do have some breaking news, but I want to just quickly hit on any additional thoughts, even Alexandra or Joe, on the supply chain call outs. And then also too, I just want to quickly hit on potentially just like, that transition of like, what does it look like from becoming a hardware to a software company, and, examples potentially like, again, the Apples of the world and some of these other companies that you've seen who've done it well, who've done it maybe not so great. But yeah, I just want to pose those questions before we jump into some other stuff that's literally happening as we're talking right now.
Joe, you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Yeah, well, I really don't. It's really not my expertise per se. I mean, we've all noticed that Tesla is really great on software, and looking at Fisker, you can kind of tell like that's a linchpin of any company. You got to be as good as the software. I mean, Fisker, it sucks to say they were never really good at software anyways, but the guy designs great looking vehicles. He just couldn't manufacture them, and so he found somebody to manufacture them, and then still couldn't nail the software. So I noticed that Tesla has really been vocal about the software capabilities and what they offer, and even offering that up to other people to purchase it is huge. I don't know how that transition is going to go. It's going to be interesting to see like who all takes them up on that. I imagine it'll probably be some of the people who were first in line for the supercharging, because I think that they understand a little bit more of the software side of it, I would think. But I mean, there's so much, like Jeff was saying, the supply chain that has to deal with the hardware. I mean, Tesla makes specific hardware for their software. So, like it's going to be very interesting to see like who rolls this out and about when. So I really don't know.
All good. Alexandra, do you want to say anything?
Let me add. I mean, obviously, there's more Sure. Obviously, there's more hardware in a car than in a phone, right? And you can't have the car software without a car. So the whole model is slightly different than what we're used to from other companies moving from hardware to software, but we're actually living it right now. I mean, we couldn't be live at a better moment than what's happening right now. And maybe, John, you want to announce it, and then I take it back and comment on it, because I've been thinking about this for a couple of days already.
Yeah, let's go with it. Let me just present and find the tab. Which one should I share? The unusual one, unusual whales, or special situations? Or
Yes, start with that one, and then we obviously have to talk about the stock price, because I think people go in the completely wrong direction, but let's go there.
Okay, can you see the screen?
It's a little bit small,
Yeah.
but I think
Okay,
what has been announced is that there are rumors, or Reuters is reporting, I don't know whether Tesla has already confirmed anything, that they are not going to launch, not yet, the Model 2 or whatever, the $25,000 cars, but are concentrating on the Robotaxi. And I'm not surprised at all. The stock price obviously doesn't appreciate that, because they never appreciate anything that's a change, right? So this is actually a great buying opportunity if I would have money, but there we are. But we just discussed that, how hard is it moving from a hardware company to a software company? And I think there had to be a hard decision to be made. Do you now concentrate on perfectioning the production line for Model 2 and implementing that in Mexico and maybe later on in India, if those rumors are right? Or do you concentrate, now that you have this huge gap in technology compared to others, and have experienced for years how other people are stealing your tech and your advances, do you concentrate on that now to consequently build out the Robotaxi and its network now? And I do believe that was a hard decision, because I'm sure in the executive teams there are people who'd rather go it the steady way and go with a Model 2 that has a steering wheel and that is sold, rather than going for the Robotaxi. But I do believe this is the right decision. I've been thinking about this for a couple of days, and probably those that follow me on X, I've put up those volcano emojis, and that's exactly what I meant. I do believe they're going to flood the world with robotaxis, and this is the moment that we're just seeing it now. Now, does it mean there will be no Model 2? I'm not sure. I just think the priority has been switched from a classic car, a classic 25,000 car, to prioritizing the Robotaxi. And as a shareholder and as somebody who's studied Tesla a lot, I couldn't be happier. I'm really pleased they're putting the pedal to the metal, because this is where they have the strategic advantage, so far ahead of everybody else. Now that neural networks and end-to-end has been confirmed, that there are tests on all eligible Tesla cars here in the United States, I think they're ready for it. They have the confirmation that they need it, and they're not waiting one more minute to get it done. I'm thrilled about this. And if the market doesn't understand it, it is what it is.
So, Alexandra, in layman terms, I was going to say, can you just explain what the announcement, or more importantly, what we're potentially seeing? So again, Unusual Whales is saying Tesla's reportedly scrapped its plans for an ultra low cost vehicle and will focus on self-driving, developing the self-driving Robotaxi on the same vehicle platform. So does that mean they're literally not going? They're going to go straight to just a Robotaxi? Is that?
Well, I think it's the priority now. I'm not sure that they're completely scratching the $25,000 normal drive car, well, with the full self-drive, but still, let's say with a steering wheel, rather than the Robotaxi without a steering wheel. And I just, I do believe it was always the unboxed method for both of those. It wasn't a question of, it was just a matter of which one first. And so far, everybody had anticipated that it would be the 25,000 steering wheel model coming out first, flooding the market, being bought by a lot of purchasers. And then on that same platform, the development of the robotaxis. Now, what seems to be reported by Reuters, again, I have not seen any confirmation from Tesla Tesla, but I would not be surprised if this is correct. They have at least put these together, if not inverse them, meaning they are now concentrating on building up this production line, the one that's in Austin at the moment, and they want to replicate in other locations. Remember, in the last earnings call, Elon told us Austin first, Mexico second, and then by year end this year, they will announce where third. Berlin seems to be in a good place to be the third production line for that. But we also heard yesterday that full self-drive in Europe, is having a lot of bureaucratic hurdles. So that may put Berlin into a difficult spot. But let's just stay concentrated on the Robotaxi. What I do believe happens is they are now prioritizing that because they know they have the goat, they have what nobody else has. And rather than waiting for others to come and license it, to which Tesla is very open, and then help them with the hardware setup and license the FSD to them, they are concentrating on building the Robotaxi and building out that network. I think it was certainly a tough decision, but it is the right decision, and it is the thing that will open the gateway to Robotaxi worldwide.
I think you're absolutely correct. I think it was probably a really tough decision, but keep in mind, I mean, anybody who's read the Walter Isaacson's book, like, this was Elon's plan all along. He had no intentions of making the lower cost vehicle first. His whole idea was to go Robotaxi, and so it just seems like the better that FSD has gotten, it just seems to. I mean, who knows? Like, we don't know what they have going right now. What I mean, with their iterations of it and everything. I mean, it could be so far advanced that we don't even have a clue. But from what we've seen with 12.3, it's freaking amazing, right? I mean, I drove it over Easter. All my family was amazed. My wife, she did it yesterday, and she was like, "This is crazy." She was FaceTiming people, and like, she really enjoyed it. So they're onto something that they know they are, and I think that's what they're realizing. And of course, Wall Street is always asleep at the wheel on this type of thing, and they've wanted it, but now that it's actually happening, they're like afraid of it. I don't know. It's funny, but it is what it is. Jeff?
Yeah. So Tesla does not do product announcements on X. Well, actually, that's not true. Maybe they announced the Model 3 refresh on X. I have to think through that again.
Well, with the new takeover, it's all changed.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all rumor too, and nobody has heard anything concrete.
Yeah, but I mean, if there's any truth to this, I think we're all saying the same thing. Tesla, there's this whole thing. Remember the whole OpenAI thing kind of like blew up, and they fired Sam Altman, the CEO, and nobody's heard from some of the board members, like Ilya. Like, what did Ilya see? Like, he was so concerned that they like. And some people were talking about, is it some form of advanced AGI? Well, like you said, like there's, they probably see a path with what's going on with autonomy now that they never saw before. And I think the frequency and releases that we're seeing over the last month is very, very telling. From a software perspective, you don't normally do that unless you're doing just like really, 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 really small changes. But here they released a whole new architecture, and then they're adding features to this thing, and you're seeing release after release really quickly. It sounds like they've really stabilized what they're doing, and it's improving rapidly. So I would just say, though, from an unboxed perspective, like I've always viewed the compact vehicle as a platform where it could be in sedan form, and they would have, in the fact that it's being built in this kind of parallel block fashion of where there's modular activity happening before and then concurrently, that they would have more flexibility between right-hand, left-hand model. And to me, I always thought steering wheel, no steering wheel. And I believe that they can postpone that capability, but there are trade-offs with doing that. And so anyway, I it's hard to say if there's any truth to this. It's a rumor. But to me, it's more. I think it's more about the pace and where they're at on autonomy, and less about their concern about how many widgets they're going to sell. And the fact that if you look at it, who is making an economical, like really nice Robotaxi? Nobody. Everybody right now is remanufacturing an existing car and bolting
Hybrid.
on sensors, and these cars cost $150,000. Who's building a $25,000 car from the ground up? Nobody's doing that. So I think, there's a couple of things here to take away. What they're seeing on autonomy, and there really isn't a vehicle like this. And I do think Tesla will have that flexibility as well, just via the way they're designing the manufacturing model, to maybe do multiple things on this platform. And I wouldn't over-rotate on this just yet.
I know Tesla really doesn't do like multiple variations on the platform, though. You really think they would do steering wheel and non on that?
Yeah, again, it's possible. There are going to be people that still want to drive a vehicle, maybe. But I understand the push, of like, hey, there's going to be kind of a future where you're going to forget that you were driving a car. And I think it's hard for us today to realize that or even think that way. But and Elon's been dropping hints. He goes, when was the last time you got in and there was an elevator operator there that was operating manually operating the elevator to making sure it stops on the right floor. And he's been trying to draw that conclusion a lot. So I believe that they're definitely seeing something that we've seen pieces of, but we haven't seen the full end-to-end piece of it yet.
All right. So I think, thank you, Alexandra, for sharing this. I just wanted to just share this real quick. So it looks like Yahoo, two sources said that they learned of Tesla's decision to scrap the Model 2 in a meeting attended by scores of employees, with one of them saying the gathering happened in late February. Elon's directive is to go all in on the Robotaxi, that person said. The third source confirmed the cancellation and said the new plans call for Robotaxis to be produced, but in a much lower volumes than the projected had been for the projected Model 2. Several company messages reviewed by Reuters about the decision included one on March 1st from an unnamed program manager for the affordable car, discussing the project's demise with the engineering staff and advising them to hold off on telling suppliers about the program cancellation. Last paragraph, a fourth person with knowledge of Tesla's plans expressed optimism about the decision to pivot away from the cheap car strategy in favor of robotaxis, a segment Musk has envisioned as the future of mobility. The source cautioned that Tesla's product plans could change again based on economic conditions. So obviously this is all hearsay, but Alexandra, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think there's actually two things that happened in parallel. First of all, the Cybertruck, you all know it much better than I do, but actually has quite a lot of elements that will be crucial for the robotaxis. Steer-by-wire, stainless steel, because these robotaxis are going to do 1 million miles, right? And the stainless, and they will be put to utility, right? People will use them. And so the fact that they have stainless steel now and figured out how to make cars of it may actually be a great support for those robotaxis. Steer-by-wire, of course, 48 volt. So there are a couple of things that happen on the hardware side, parallel to them solving. When was that Elon video? Was it second half of August when he drove through the suburbs past Zucchi's house? And so that is August. We're April. So in that 8-month period, not even 8-month period, we have now the same, if not the better version of that software in nearly all North America cars, in North America Tesla cars. So when you see that speed, that acceleration, his desire to always make this a robotaxi business, I am not surprised. I am enthusiastic. Was it painful? Of course it was, because they had for a couple of months, if not for a short year. When were we all? It was in November, right? When we were at the Cybertruck event. I'm sorry, I'm always losing time sensitivity, but in November when we were in Austin, it just looked as if they were building the production line for the Model 2. I'm just going to call it Model 2 now for being clear, next door, and that was, you know, the big project. To cut that, if really it's cancelled, I still have a doubt whether it's cancelled or just less prioritized, but let's see. And get to the robotaxi decision, you need balls. I'm saying it because this means you are convinced in you having the software and the hardware to make it happen, and I think we're there. This is a glorious moment if this gets confirmed, and I really hope it does get confirmed by Tesla. I love that Wall Street doesn't get it, but it doesn't matter. They will get it sooner or later. I actually don't agree with the notion that it will be in lesser volumes. Yes, probably in lesser volumes than the Model 2. If people were thinking that the Model 2 would be there 10 million cars per year, robotaxis will probably be less because it will have to roll out in jurisdiction where it is allowed. And let me get to the point of jurisdiction. I actually shared this week an article from the Washington Post where a couple of truck makers, including Mercedes, I think was the third one, but the first two were other ones, are now rolling out self-driving trucks. And they had a whole paragraph on legislation. Apart from 10 states in the United States, as long as robotaxi is not, as long as full self-drive is not explicitly forbidden, it is allowed. So that makes 40 states out of 50. And the other 10 have provisions and are starting to work on provisions to make it happen. So when I hear people saying, oh, but legislation is there. It's not there everywhere, but it's there in most of the US states. And I think that's what Tesla is, once we can prove that safety is so much better than human driving, it will get there everywhere, including Europe. Of course, it will be USA, China, Japan first before it gets to Europe. And it's just ironic how Europe is delayed and always making a fuss about things much too long. But other than that, again, this was a hard decision, but this is the right decision. I can see it. This is going to flood, and this is going to have margins for us shareholders that you can only dream of. This is nothing to do with car margins anymore. This is the pivotal GPT moment for Tesla, and it will take them weeks and months to understand it. So please, if you have money, know what you're doing now.
So this is the wild podcast because Elon just said they're lying. Oh my God.
Well,
there you go.
Well, of course he's going to say that. They have to make an official announcement and everything. He's not going to be like,
well, yeah. Well, if they're lying, right? They're lying. I think it's.
Yeah.
I
don't think he would. Yeah. I don't think he'd.
I think he would.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me just show obviously, I'm just trying to bring this up, but yeah, he just responded to Zero Hedge. Tesla scraps low cost car plans. Reuters. Elon just said they're lying again.
Yeah.
So
I was like, Reuters. I mean, it's Reuters, right? They've always tried to do what they can.
7%. Jeez. What I was going to say, though, I do agree with everything that you were saying, Alexandra. I mean, in that, I think, we're seeing it now in that Tesla is still like, if they are all in on FSD, on Robotaxi, which we're starting to see that, right? It's like, Elon was saying at the end of the quarter, every person that gets a new Tesla needs the V12 and they need to get a free demo ride. And again, I was hit up after the quarter was over and they're asking, hey, when do you want to go on your free demo ride? So we know that they're making this transition. And actually, if this even was true, like it would kind of make sense. But I would hope, obviously during earnings coming up in a couple of weeks, that they would really go deep into this. So we'll see.
I just want to point out, he's saying they are lying to the fact that they're scrapping Model 2. Yeah. I agree that Model 2 is still there. I think the question that Elon should be asked is, what is the priority now? And or is there a different priority? Because before that, priority was Model 2 and later the Robotaxi. Has that changed? And I would really be very curious what his answer is on that one.
Yeah. So again, it's anything's possible. Sorry. I'm just like floored. It's like Reuters says this, and then we're over
about
here,
life,
and then,
right?
Yeah, exactly. What about Q1? So it's interesting just to see not only just the stuff coming out, but more importantly just where things are going. So and we will know more on that in the upcoming weeks. Okay, totally floored and went one way and straight to the other. So I guess back to the normal cadence. Tesla again is hitting 1 million Teslas in about 6.5 months. Just literally from, I think, it's pretty insane just to see how quickly they are ramping these cars. I think from 5 million to 6 million is just crazy, because I mean this company was barely doing 5,000 cars a week in just 5 or 6 years ago, or 6-7 years ago. So just crazy how quickly they are ramping. I feel like we just need to watch Twitter. Elon's just like responding right now. But so let's see. All right. And then I think one other thing just quickly to hit on is Sawyer was just calling out last night that Tesla's once again offering the free FSD transfers for all of the whole sexy lineup, excluding the Cybertruck. And then obviously these are stackable with all the adjustments. So the actual Model X that I got last week, I had free lifetime supercharging transferred FSD plus the demo vehicle adjustments, along with Cybertruck reservation discount, which was an additional 1,000 plus an interior trim discount. So there was just like, it was just like pouring rain on incentives last quarter. So that's why I picked up one. But what are you thinking about, some of these additional like incentives that they're just continuing to carry on through the quarters?
I mean, I'll just say they're using Tesla's created these tools over a decade, the supercharger network, and, FSD, and these things need to be driven to high utilization, high usage, and they're very high gross margin things for Tesla. So if they can use them as levers for demand, they should. As someone who's bought FSD many times, it's nice to see that this is finally in place, especially when there's all this talk and chatter about giving it away to everybody once it's solved. It's nice after buying it, many times, that you have the opportunity now to transfer it to another vehicle. Because I think if you bought it once, it's yours. So I think this is good. And I think Tesla's using their tools. I think it's great, better than just using cash discounts to drive demand. And no one else has these tools.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to see. That would be insane if they ever change the free supercharging to the Cybertruck. I think people would be literally going out and buying new vehicles, even if they had already bought two. So we also saw that Tesla is now just making it easier and easier and more clear on which cars are available for federal tax credit, along with now you can also search by payment method, whether it's cash, financing, or leasing. So I think that was one of the things I dealt with last quarter. I was hoping to see, I was just trying to see if my Model Y actually was available for the discount or the federal tax credit. And the only problem was when you look, it has to be on the MSRP. So if you add on, paint or anything else, it will automatically be disqualified. So I had a 7-seater, and obviously because that costs extra money, it's like, whatever, it's $3,000 to $5,000, whatever the amount is. Unfortunately, that did not apply for the tax credit. So this is going to be super helpful to be able to click through on the eligibility for the federal tax credits, along with, being able to also sort by whether or not, the preferred payment method. But
yeah, I think Tesla's doing a very good job of these demand levers that they're issuing like throughout the year. I mean, just periodically, just keep dropping these little things that's like, oh yeah, they never did that, or oh yeah, they were never in that area, and now they're finally there. You know what I mean? Like there's all these little things that are just like falling into place over the next year. 2025 is going to be crazy.
yeah, absolutely. It's going to be, we'll see what happens, especially given where they're going to be headed and what they're going to be focused on. I mean, even more so now, I feel like I'm hoping, obviously I would you guys assume, Jeff and Alexandra, in this earnings call from your perspective, do you think that they're going to be, they should share guidance for the year, right? Like they could pretty much have to, or is that something you think that they may even...
Well, I mean, if only half of what we heard this morning is true, how can you guide? I mean, you cannot guide anymore, right? If we're shifting, if it's like shifting tectonics, you can't guide. I don't want them to guide. I think there's lots of things to happen in before and at that Q1 earnings call. So expect some volatility in the stock price still. I mean, obviously, the smoke today wasn't without any fire. Again, I want to precise, I do believe there's some credibility to it. I don't think they're completely canceling the Model 2, but I think the priorities have shifted. The second point is we're still waiting for this proxy for the shareholder meeting in May, right? It was last year in May, should be this year in May. In that proxy, we may have indications now for the new comp package. We may have indications whether we're changing from Delaware to Texas that we have to vote for, or we may have nothing of that. But that proxy that is, I mean, I thought it was out for weeks already. It's still not out, but that's certainly coming in the next coming couple of days before the Q1 earnings call. That's going to bring a whole new list of subjects up that may be discussed in the earnings call. The financials themselves, I think they're hardly relevant anymore. Obviously, with these delivery numbers, they're not going to be as great as people had anticipated a year ago, and with all the incentives given, the margin is going to be still under pressure. So I don't think the financials themselves are going to be the main topic. The main topics are going to be what is in the proxies, where they are with prioritizing robotaxis, where they are with rolling out FSD, and so those topics are, I mean, they're fluctuating on a daily basis. It's tough to keep up with. So it's very difficult to say what we're going to have in 18 days because it just feels like light years away from today. And does it matter in the medium-term outlook for Tesla? It doesn't. If you believe in full self-driving and in the robots and in robotaxis, doesn't matter what happens on the 23rd of April. But if you're concerned with the stock price, looking for good levels to enter, maybe even an option player, you have some volatility ahead of you. There is no doubt. Lots of hot subjects still coming up. And while I have the mic, I just want to recall again, we're having a couple of episodes still on that Delaware court case. It's not because we're changing from Delaware to Texas that is going away. So on the 1st of May, Tesla's attorneys are going to have a hearing on what they think the plaintiff's attorney should be paid. Remember, he said he wanted to be paid $6 billion in Tesla shares. So this is going to be the response from Tesla. Then about a month later, the plaintiff's attorney can react to what Tesla has proposed. And a week later, so that's beginning of June, I think the 7th or 8th of June is a hearing where they could have come to a compromise, meaning the attorneys from both sides could have negotiated and come to a solution and bring that solution forward. I don't expect that to happen. And then a month later, meaning beginning of July, I think it's the 8th of July, there's going to be the last hearing from the judge, and she may then render her verdict, which is obviously known on all points except of the remuneration for the plaintiff's attorney. So that's a couple of chapters that's still going to keep us busy. And then after that, we'll see whether Tesla will appeal to the case or not. And that is still all going to happen in Delaware, whether we change the incorporation state from Delaware to Texas or not.
Just on, sorry, Jeff, were you gonna say something?
No.
Okay. Just on that, I mean, do you think, I mean, obviously there's a couple of cases even now being sprung up. Do you think Tesla is just waiting, or do you think they're preparing, they're getting their ducks in a row to respond to this overall?
Oh, to respond to the Delaware case, of course,
Yes.
they're preparing their 1st of May hearing for sure. I expect they're going in there and telling them that they deserve nothing or minimal amount, I don't know, a couple of millions, and that's that. But they're getting their ducks in a row, because if that judgment allocates, I mean, that also all depends how the judgment is going to be pronounced. But if the judgment is that the plaintiff's attorney gets all this money, they're going to appeal. I mean, Tesla is not going to let them steal $6 billion in shares just for this crazy political hack scene. So yes, they are prepared, and I think a couple of shareholders are prepared as well. There's still stuff happening. I want to just call out while you give me the opportunity. We're still doing things. I mean, you've been all very great and gracious with your time and your energy in helping us set up that letter to the board that we did in February. Then thousands of you have responded to write letters to the judge. That was really great, because now she's left with all these letters and has to decide what she's doing with it. She can't just, throw them in the bin. The 2 attorneys are going to be heard on what they want to be done with these letters. So obviously Tesla's attorney is going to say they want to add them to the case, because that will be then additional evidence for the appeal. So and there will be things coming. We're working on stuff. It all depends obviously how it's going and how the next couple of weeks are going. But we're ready, and I will need you to be mobilized when we know exactly how we have to react. And I couldn't be more grateful for the absolutely astonishing community we have, sharing, participating, writing letters, and doing everything again. And this may not be the last one I needed. And so please keep an eye on that.
Yeah, no, we will be, once if there is anything that we can do specifically about the comp package or anything to make our voice heard, we are ready to be mobilized. That's for sure. One thing that, again, I think, as we, whether there's much truth or, I mean, no truth to really we know that there's, we know that priorities potentially are shifting, and we do know either way that Tesla is prioritizing this transition into a software company. What are some, what does that process look like? Is it pretty is it probably is years of just, years of just potentially a lot of headwinds, as you kind of get there. Maybe it's just 1 year, but I think, as soon as Tesla kind of continues to just push that way, which they are, but they obviously haven't given any official announcements, in their earnings call specifically about that. But, what does that look like from your guys' backgrounds and just what you've seen happen in the market in general, with various other companies? And the biggest one I think of is just Apple, right? I mean, and Apple has done, even, you could probably potentially even say what Microsoft too. I mean, really, there's just been some companies that have done really transitioned into it well. Even Amazon, in that, going from the just their web store to now cloud services, and that has been their biggest moneymaker. But does examples come to mind, and anything that we can kind of give to our viewers on what this could look like for the next year or two?
I'll just say quickly, it doesn't have to be headwinds. I mean, Microsoft and Apple grew from 1 trillion to 2 trillion to 3 trillion while they were making this transition, and they really haven't, Apple still hasn't fully transitioned to that, but they have huge services revenue. So what it does is it takes the component of how your company is valued, and it can run with a higher multiple. But you can argue that Tesla is running with a higher multiple today. And if you look at the top rated analysts on Wall Street for autos, Adam Jonas, he's got, I think, just over $1 of earnings this year and a $310 price target. So you've got almost 300, 250 to 300x multiple that he's putting on the company. So he's giving the hardware auto business a very small valuation to the rest of the business that Tesla is developing. And again, and all of their services that Tesla is developing are actually grounded in hardware. It's going to be their inference silicon in their cars and in the bot. It's going to be the network infrastructure they're doing for Dojo. It's going to, and of course, it's going to be the full self-driving and AI work from their AI engineers. So, yeah, in short, Tesla's been building up to this for a number of years. There doesn't have to be necessarily a tremendous amount of headwinds, although you can argue and say that we've been maybe going through that, or they've been going through that for the past couple of quarters as volumes have somewhat leveled off. So, but yeah, it doesn't have to be any extended period of headwinds. And recently, Apple, when they really flipped on and stopped reporting iPhone units, they went from a $2 trillion company to a $3 trillion company. So it's not easy, but it has been done. And I think the way Tesla's approaching it, I mean, they're honestly, they're taking on an entire auto industry, an entire industry, and in travel and vehicle travel, not just retail purchases of cars, but everything. And so it's a multi-trillion-dollar market to disrupt, and they can and maybe first in a very big way in volume.
Alexandra, do you have any thoughts?
No, I'm still puzzled with everything that happened this morning. This is great. I just love this.
I know. I'm like floored. I'm like, shout out to Joe. I think we had, hey, this is the way the schedule's gonna go, and then it's like here. But I knew, like, once I saw that, I saw Elon tweeting, I was like, this guy's going to comment if there's anything lying about it, or but yeah, I think what will be interesting when I think of this is, we all know that FSD is not quite there yet. Even V12, with being as good as it is, we're still a bit of ways away. So the question is, like, even as these other companies, let's say, have transitioned, and they were doing it potentially like, as they were transitioning out of the, reporting, let's say, iPhone units into, more of the services. Can Tesla do this, make this transition happen, even though they haven't obviously fully delivered the Robotaxi technology quite yet? Just because I think there's a lot more awareness that they can.
John, developing the car. Sure.
Oh.
But John, developing the car is going to take a year and a half, right? Like the Model 2 would have taken. We were always thinking it would be end of 25, beginning of 26. Can you imagine how many iterations of FSD 12 we'll have by then? I mean, this will, every month now, we're going to see a better version. The little things that are still not perfect are going to be optimized so quickly that they need to be ready. If the goal is Robotaxi, if you believe that, and I think the goal is robots and Robotaxis, but if the first goal becomes now Robotaxis, FSD will be ready by the time the car is ready. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, and I often wonder too, do we sometimes sit back and think, they have the S, the 3, the X, the Y, the Cybertruck. What are those going to be like a year from now when they have the ability to flip a switch and be fully autonomous? We don't think about that sometimes, because right now people go in to buy these cars, and most people are not buying, FSD with the vehicle. They're buying the vehicle for the vehicle. It's the best EV. But now you're going to be able to go in and buy the vehicle, and you're going to have probably a range of different options to have full autonomy at various price points. I just think it's a completely different ballgame, a year from now, maybe even less, even on the existing fleet, not to mention this new platform we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think Alexandra, you also made a good point too, is just that so I think over the next year it'll be interesting to see again how this transition happens. But yeah, we all know that FSD will continue to get better. And one thing that was really interesting that we saw, honestly, was in the past 2 weeks, was just seeing Tesla flip on the switch for V12 for all of these cars. And that's the power of what Tesla is capable of doing, especially with hardware 3, and really, any of the even 2018, 2017, 2019 Model 3s, that have been around a minute. All of that has the full self-driving capabilities. So But yeah, obviously a lot happening even right now. I mean, Elon is just nonstop tweeting right now. I mean, some of it's probably relevant, some of it's not, but a lot is changing. Obviously, we had the Q1 deliveries this past week. We, there was again some reports this morning about Reuters potentially was reporting on the Model 2. And we're getting more clarity. So a lot of this is still happening raw. Obviously, the earnings call is coming up in a couple of weeks, so make sure to be ready for that. And hopefully we get more information. But at the same time, knowing very Tesla fashion, less is more, as they've always, I think, have been. So we'll see. But thank you everyone for tuning in this week. I think we're hitting the top of the hour. Bit of a chaotic call or podcast today. But that's the nature of the beast of literally doing a live stream, which is what makes it even more awesome. So appreciate the support. Make sure you like and subscribe on the channel. If you're following us as well, please make sure to also give a follow to Jeff, Alexandra, and Joe. They're tagged on YouTube or on X. But we appreciate the support, and we will see you all next week.